Well, hello and welcome, execs in the know. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes to let everyone successfully get logged in. For you that may not know me, my name is Chad McDaniel. I'm president and co-founder of Execs in the Know. I'm actually traveling at a hotel room today, so hoping all goes well with the Wi-Fi here in the room, and I'm sure it's all going to do just fine. But it's been a fast year. Execs know we've been very busy continuing a number of different topic-related conversations, which I think a lot of you have continued to participate in. So thank you for your support of the community as we, as a group of CX leaders, look to elevate our industry, learning and sharing, and overall best practice sharing. So we got a good topic today, and I've got a great guest I've asked to come join us. And one thing I've told John as we get into this conversation, the title, Why Omnichannel Digital Self-Service is the Future for Customer Engagement. We've been talking about this for a long time as a community, and I want to get past some of the cursory stuff. I really want to get into the teeth of the challenge, best case use case study. I brought in an expert with John that's really going to try to help us in the community to dive into this topic. So I'm real excited for today's conversation. And I hope for our listeners, thank you so much for your time and value of time. Please get your questions asked in the question box, and we'll make sure we get them answered for you. I just got a couple slides I want to go through, and then John, I want to quickly get to you. We're quite excited, community, to get together again. We were just past March in Clearwater, Florida, outside of the Tampa area, but we're going to be just in Coronado and San Diego, October 24th to the 26th. Incredible gathering for those that have been to our Customer Response Summit, our signature event over the last 10, 12 years. I think the quality of conversation and gathering. I really hope that you'll come join us and make your plans to join us, but we're quite excited for that. For those that are first time listening to Execs in the Know, welcome. We are a corporate CX sharing community. We call it Leaders Learning from Leaders. It's a great opportunity. Just go to our website, execsintheknow.com. Go to the Knowledge Center. There's some amazing free content and research and articles and all from CX leaders and brand spotlights that we curate and put together out there for your success. You also can find some of the live events and other gatherings that we're doing. So I would encourage you to get involved. We're really here as a movement to elevate the success of our industry. Great corporate advisory board. I just want to say a shout out to these brands. They really help guide us and also keep a seat at the table and making sure we're keeping conversations such as today very near and dear and real. So I just want to say thank you to our entire corporate advisory board. I will say, if you're not involved, one last piece here before I turn over to John, get involved in our private online community. This is 24/7. This is our digital online community. You can literally connect with others. Some amazing conversations. People are asking questions about vendors. They're asking questions about topic-related subjects, implementations. It's very rich, feature-rich in conversations, and you should look to join the private online community for the corporate brands. Okay, well, John, you're in San Francisco, one of my favorite places in the country there. And John, I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate your willingness to come into the Execs in the Know community and help us really dive into this very thoughtful conversation. There's probably a good number of people that have never heard of Airkit, so I think it's important that we at least establish a little bit of a bench line there. And then I know we've got a lot of thoughtful discussion and some poll questions we want to get to with the time today. So welcome, John.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate the warm welcome, Chad, and I look forward to the discussion around omnichannel and digital engagement. First, simply, what is Airkit? Airkit is a digital engagement platform. We consider digital journeys and channels as a way to actually communicate with customers such that we can tie into discrete systems and provide a seamless customer experience that's consistent across each platform. So when
John,
you
I'm just going to say
sorry, go ahead.
John, I was just going to say, we definitely have some of your brands that are in our community, and they've said some really delightful things about what you guys are doing. So keep up the great work, and then I'll go ahead and turn it to you again.
Awesome. Interruptions are always welcome. They're perfect. Often when I think about omnichannel, I think about the CRM as well as the comms strategy, which is what's your system of record and kind of how do you communicate outbound to your customers. From a customer perspective, it's really much more about how do they feel? What does that experience feel like? I often think about customer effort score, which is what is the effort that it takes that customer to engage with you, and does the company really know me? A little bit about me. I'm John. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Airkit. My responsibility includes the implementation team, customer success, customer support, as well as developer relations. And developer relations is really the evangelist of getting developers on the Airkit platform. A little bit about me personally, just so you get a little bit of context. I have loved mountain biking ever since I went to college at UC Berkeley. I recently did a little bit of a workcation in Montana and Utah, and I did this in Moab. I did this whole enchilada trail that descended from 9,000 feet to 4,000 feet over 25 miles. It was amazing. It was awesome. It was great. And so that's a little bit about my passion. But let's dig into Omnichannel, and welcome to have you ask questions as we go along. Ideally, this is an interactive session, and we can kind of learn from each other as we go. Okay, as far as a digital imperative, when I think about a digital imperative, I think about companies like Uber and Spotify, who might be like mobile first. Oftentimes companies think about overall agent efficiency and agent tooling. Sometimes I think about call deflection and avoidance, right? Cost avoidance. Oftentimes digital imperatives might be KYC, know your customer, data accuracy, data integrity, things like that. Some companies get this right. So I happen to be a big fan of Fluvog shoes, and they know me, they understand what I bought in the past. They're really good at recommending options, and they're really good about having a consistent voice online. But when it comes to like chat and kind of like follow-up, they're tragic. They're really kind of like in the dark ages as far as how they engage. And so a digital imperative for me is really getting an understanding of how your customer consumes these interactions. Are these interactions consistent? And do they get a feel for your brand as they go? So what I wanted to do next is kind of like get into a poll and get a little bit of interaction and feedback from the audience. And so what I'd like to do is ask a question. When you think about the word omnichannel, what comes to mind? Is it really the comms strategy that I talked about, the chat, voice, text, email? Is it the experience, kind of customer journey and learning pathways? Is it the tech stack, which is just like CRM, voice, marketing solutions, et cetera? Or is it department silo? So if you wouldn't mind, click through and kind of vote against this polling. I'd love to see kind of what your feedback is and what your experience is. So as we wait for those results to come in, Chad, did you have a question or comment on the question there?
No, I just want to, again, encourage the audience. We've got a few poll questions that we kind of learned together. So your input in there is important. John, are you seeing some of the results coming through?
Let's take a look. I am seeing some of the results coming through. Okay. I think that's really good.
I was curious when we were talking about this particular question, what we think the top answer will be. And I don't want to tip my hat to anything with the community here, but we're going to close this down here just in a second, John. So give it 10 more seconds or so, and let's push it out and then get some reaction from you.
Sounds good. But before I push out the results, Chad, I want to know what your selection would be as far as what do you think about when you think about omnichannel? What comes to mind?
The whole end to end, I guess. And, I could think of, I guess, the experience, not through the channels itself, but just the end to end journey and how that seamlessly feels as a consumer.
Yeah, awesome. And that was the highest rated one. I think that's really good, which is kind of thinking about the end to end journey. I think the challenge that most companies face is thinking about this next slide, which is how does my company operate, and then how do I start building for my customer? So from a B2C company typically you start from an ERP and a manufacturing system.
Mm-hmm.
Then you kind of drop into shipping, kind of like, where is my order? And companies like Amazon seem to do this exceptionally well, right? Whereas other companies really struggle with just the basics of kind of like the shipment update. As a
Yeah,
customer,
John,
I get really, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you're done there, let's go back to just go previous slide and push the results to the audience there, just the map polling. So there should be a little
I
button
did
that
push
says
them.
at the bottom, push the
Yeah, they're
audience.
pushed.
They're pushed. Okay, I'm not seeing them, but everyone else has seen them. Yes. Okay, maybe on my console it's not showing. Okay, so the
no
number one
problem.
answer, you answered that. Thank you.
Cool, great. So again, technology and succeeding with technology, which is great. From this side, the conversation is really about how companies think about their operating process versus how customers see it. And for me as a consumer, when I lose context in talking to a customer, when I go from chat to email to voice, if I have to repeat myself, that just creates a bunch of frustration. There's also, when you think about omnichannel, there's a bunch of companies due to cost efficiency, which are trying to deflect calls and not really engage. And so how do we think about that? So I wanted to ask another question, and it ties into the previous question, and I'm certain we'll get the view results right this time. But like from a company perspective, how frequently do you do digital journey mapping exercises? So the answer to the prior question was that you really think about the customer journey itself. The question here is really, how often do you revisit that customer journey? Does that customer journey change? Is it different from a billing perspective, from a selling perspective, from a follow-up perspective and returns? How does that all work out? And so what I'll do now is go ahead.
So while they're voting, have we pushed to the audience or the results? They can vote now?
They do have the vote. They are voting. I see the voting results, which is great.
Well,
and I'm just going to
before you push,
in
Ron,
like 5 seconds.
Before you push, I was going to say, I really hope that the answer would be quarterly, but I think the reality is far from that. Anyone that votes quarterly, please email me, chat@execsintheknow.com, because I really want to hear from you, and we'll have a conversation. But curious to what the results are.
Yeah, I'll push the results now, and the audience should see it. But basically, it's less frequently than quarterly. And as you expected, Chad, that the quarterly was not that common. And I think part of the challenge about digital journey mapping is just that it takes time. It's a cross-departmental effort, and there's other priorities and initiatives that make that a challenge. So I wanted to kind of talk through an example and kind of break this apart, and we can think about it. So Airbnb, I think, is a really great example. So they have a great mobile app experience. Recently, I was in Montana, and the ability to interact with the host, the ability to kind of get the address and kind of how to get into the location was amazing. They definitely have a notification framework, and they definitely have a perspective. They want a closed communication perspective, so all communication needs to go through the app, whether it's mobile or a browser. But they do have a notification framework, which is like email and SMS, to let people know that activity is occurring. The unique thing is most companies, as you think about omnichannel, don't have that closed system, right? They may use SMS and email notification, but what they don't do is shut down chat or shut down calls. And so when you think about Airbnb, the next thing to think about is really just the stack that sits underneath that. And so when you think about the tech stack, this is probable, I don't know exactly, but the tech stack might have some kind of combination of Salesforce and Twilio and Zendesk for CRM and comms. They might have Adobe and DocuSign for things like contract execution, things like that. For kind of chat and kind of website engagement, they might have Contentful or Intercom or Segment. And so when you think about this stuff, it's really interesting. I start to break it apart and start to think about, well, who owns what system, right? And so from a support perspective, they might own Intercom, the CRMs, and Adobe. From a marketing perspective, they might own Contentful and Typeform. And from an IT perspective, they might own WordPress and they might own the which is Twilio. And so what happens as you kind of take this technology and break it into department owners, you get kind of different prioritization and different voices as we speak to our customers, right? And this tends to happen across companies as we see it. And so oftentimes, how does a company, like if this is your internals, your departments, as well as your tech stack, from a customer perspective, what customers really see from an Airbnb perspective is my mobile phone, my chat, my email. How am I actually getting information and updates based on my booking and reservation? So what Airbnb absolutely enables is the ability to engage in the medium of my choice. There's definitely a consistent kind of look and feel as I navigate from both a browser and a mobile device, as well as like the email notification, which drives me right back to the mobile experience. The booking, as I talked about before, the notification framework, the booking triggers the SMS and email, and the engagement is really locked into the engagement to be through the mobile app. They also kind of do a really nice job of journey mapping, right? And so the end of your visit or your stay actually has a satisfaction survey that ties back. And so you can see that they've spent a lot of time rationalizing the software solution and the customer journey into like a consistent journey experience. I think for a lot of us, the challenge, myself included, the challenge is you have a system that's deployed at scale, and now how do you actually revisit that customer journey across department, across tech stack? So from a digital experience perspective, it can be summed up as loyalty, right? So how do we take the loyalty input and think about negative experience that drive churn? How can we make sure that we're aware of those negative experiences, and how can we respond to them? What are the things that drive loyalty? What are the notification infrastructure that we have in place to educate us based on what's happening in real time with our customers? So I have one more really quick poll for you here. When you think about your customer base and you think about kind of your focus areas as far as customer loyalty, where do you really double click as a team? Do you really think about the personalization, really a tailored message to that individual, kind of like the bogged experience I talked about? Do you talk about attainability, just different tiers and different levels within your loyalty program? Do you want to have kind of a diverse set of rewards, things that might be different and unique to each customer? Do you think about loyalty as far as better UX? And so does better UX drive loyalty? And then finally, do you think about gamification, right? Like how can we make sure that we're actually encouraging customers to respond? And so I'm seeing some of the results have come in through already, which is great. I'm going to give it another 5 seconds. But it's really interesting to see the results and to think about that. And so I'm going to just push the results to the audience. And what you see is a big focus on personalization, right? The personalization of how you engage in a loyalty program, of providing kind of tailored content based on your profile is really meaningful. But the second one was really better UX, and so for me, I think a lot about customer effort score. And how does that UX actually make you feel as a consumer? Am I being blocked from content, or is content being opened up for me? I often think about digital deflection, right? And digital deflection, I love and I'll embrace as long as it gets me to my result faster. If digital deflection is just getting me off the phone, it's not something that I'm going to enjoy. It's not a great experience. So when you think about rising expectations and consistent customer demands, you start to think about there's nothing worse than just kind of repeating your content over chat, right? Companies decide to either restrict your access, or they do a cost of product shortcomings, right? So when you think about restricting access, that's really what I was talking about like kind of hiding the connect or call me number, versus leaving it wide open and really staffing a heavy contact center effort to actually drive customer satisfaction. So really throwing bodies at the problem as opposed to solutions, right? And when you think about a customer journey, I think how do you minimize your customer's effort score? And how do you spend more quality of time with your customers on the phone? And so when I think about minimizing customer effort score, when there are things like KYC where I can update my contact information, or I can update my preference as far as notifications around where's my order, whether it's an order or a claim or an update, those are really valuable to me. But when I talk to a customer service agent, I want to get that agent right away. I want to have a good quality conversation. And yeah, I'm happy to do on the backside, either through email or through SMS, kind of respond to any open-ended questions that are there. What surveys also talk about is trust and loyalty, right? So did I have a positive customer experience? Does it make me more likely to purchase again? Have I recommended the company based on the excellence of service? And will I forgive the company for its mistakes? I think for me, that last one really is the one that touches home. So what does excellent customer service look like? I always think about, are the KPIs telling the true story? Oftentimes I get operational KPIs from a services delivery perspective as far as uptime and availability, but am I actually really driving success? So the final poll question I want to ask you guys, just to get some good feedback, is how does your organization address negative feedback? Do you focus on a quick response to the issue? Do you work on agent training around empathy? Do you empower the agents to get the situation right? And do you just explain the policy? I think for me, the answer is really obvious, but I do think it's important, and I'll bias this poll, it's okay. I do think it's important to empower agents to make the situation right. But part of that is training, but the other part of that is really actually making it available to the agents to be able to do so. So the poll is a little split here. I'll push out the results in about 5 seconds. But basically, there's always a big push to a quick response to the issue, but definitely the empowerment of the agent to do what's right. And so what I feel that most businesses get right here is the quick response. That's okay. Most businesses have some basic training around empathy, but how do we actually make sure from a loyalty perspective that we drive a response to the negative feedback that's a closed loop system? And the final chart that I want to walk through is like the personalization climb. I think, again, as you think about the tech stack as it was deployed, as you constantly think about your customer journeys and kind of updating that based on changing things, whether it's COVID or inflation or kind of anything else, how do I continue to invest in personalization and know my customers better? I always think about targeted ads, right? So targeted ads are really funny. They're really good at knowing that I was interested in searching for shoes. What they don't know is whether I bought shoes. And so to me, when I think about that digital journey, I think about connecting that digital journey to data. So a lack of connected data drives kind of like data lakes and a bad experience. So from an Airkit perspective, what we think about is unifying this digital agent experience, right? So when I think about Airkit, we think about this digital experience, which is how do you relate context across your experiences? And so if I start on the left-hand side with a chat conversation, and I want to escalate that chat conversation, how do I actually take that context from that conversation and infuse that into a digital journey, which could be an SMS or a call with an agent, escalate to a call with an agent, or do I create a scheduled call content? And so at Airkit, we're a CX digital platform. And so the ability to actually take a journey and deploy that journey across multiple mediums, whether it's like a chat bot on a web page, whether it's a digital journey from an SMS that has a mobile app look and feel, or finally on the right, what you look at is like agent efficiency items. So as an agent, I really want to, and as a contact center manager, I really want to focus on the content that we had on that call, but where there are kind of non-priority tasks, whether it's kind of filling out claim information, whether it's filling out kind of order information, preferences or kind of your traditional know your customer. Do I really want to have the agent typing in the address online, or can I actually take it onto an offline process and actually send it to the customer via SMS and have them fill that out that day, that hour, that week? So anyway, as we think about it from an Airkit perspective, it's really the ability to kind of work across all these platforms, retain context, and from a development perspective, you're essentially reusing the same digital journey to accomplish multiple solutions. So kind of like that brand consistency across different user experiences. I thought I'd just bring in a couple samples of customers that we work with and kind of their experience and some of their challenges, just to kind of give you a feel for kind of operating at scale and what that means. So the first example that you can see is Guardian. And Guardian, their focus is really around scale and efficiency. So again, like we use the Airbnb example where we talked about the tech stack and then how customers expect to be worked with. When you think about, receiving 22,000 calls as it relates to a claim per month, per year, that's a super high volume of calls. Is there a way that we can take something like repeated calls around a claim and a claim resolution and actually automate that to an SMS such that, similar to a where's my order flow, you can actually text people or email them on the medium of their preference. What's the status of that claim? Where's it going? As far as know your customer, like a broker hub, how can we improve information such that you can get better results? Information is always a give-get, especially in the insurance industry. How can we kind of encourage them to fill out information that helps us accelerate their claim in this example, or actually add on additional policies? And then how can we reduce the overall customer effort score? So if I want to take processes offline, like form filling, fine, or I can actually push it to a digital journey. From a roadmap perspective, what they're thinking about is they're really focusing on velocity and competency. So as they look at their existing customer experience or customer journey, how can we pick apart other kind of value-added solutions, whether it's like form application, form follow-up, it can also be kind of renewals. How do we make sure that that digital engagement with our customer, whether it's a beginning sign-up process, whether it's an account maintenance process, or it's an upsell process, how do we make sure that we engage with the customer in the medium of their preference? The next example that I wanted to kind of talk through a little bit is a project that we've been working on with Accenture. It started really with the state of Maryland and has expanded to the state of New Mexico and the state of Kansas, right? And what Maryland's challenge is as a state is that they have a contact center. It's a fixed asset, right? But they also have things like COVID and claims and other charges legislation that becomes available, and the contact center needs to respond. It's a finite set of capability and capacity. So that capacity is not going to change. And unfortunately, for the contact center, the legislation gets passed and then they quickly need to dive into kind of response and resolution. So from their perspective, they're really the tip of the spear from a state response perspective. So what they're really interested in is velocity. And what you're seeing, the screenshots that you see there are a scheduled call flow that's related to, one is for the Department of Labor, another is for the Department of Adjudication. And so their ability to deploy scheduling and appointments is fundamental to them being able to support their customer base. And so they were able to deploy scheduling apps and just relabel it and rebrand it within 5 business days. So being able to, legislation gets passed, the contact center is spun up, and they're ready and available to respond. This helps them in a couple different ways, right? So one challenge for them is scheduling calls and scheduling off-peak calls. And I think most companies are pretty good at thinking about scheduling off-peak calls. The other part that's really important is the ability to actually connect with the end citizen, right? So from a citizen perspective, when they're not available or we have to do repeated outbound calls, the citizen experience is, it's a state, they don't care. But with a notification framework, which is saying, hey, your call is coming up in a half hour, an hour, as well as the ability to actually subscribe to updates if my claim status changes, really changes the nature of the game for them such that they can actually really only call once and connect with the consumer, so their connect rates are way up. And secondly, they reduce kind of the repeat callbacks as it relates to a status on something like a claim or something of that nature. The final example that I want to talk through a little bit, and hopefully this is just kind of like tickling the back of your brain, is Mercado. And so Mercado is a customer that is really looking for scale and efficiency. They have different challenges as it relates to customer support and sales. So Mercado is an e-commerce delivery service that actually brokers between the end consumer and local grocers and high-end grocery stores, independent grocery stores. And so what they want to do initially was really just automate the complaint experience. So if you had a complaint that your order wasn't complete or a wrong item was delivered, how do we automate that experience? Then they wanted to further extend that to say, maybe what we need to do is actually push out more information about kind of where is my order and is it en route, et cetera. And then start to think about some proactive things about client management, premium. They have a Mercado Green, which is their premium customers. How do we think about engaging from that? And the interesting thing is both from a sales and a support perspective, it's about issue resolution. It's about managing low value calls and how do we do self-help? And so from a sales perspective, it's really self-help, but then how do they have the targeted resources available to actually focus on their key grocers and the ones that they want to engage with? So the kind of final content slide that I have, and then I'm more than happy to open it up, is that from our perspective, our experience is that if you can have one platform from a developer perspective that allows you to communicate across other digital experiences, where on the left-hand side, you're talking about a chat experience. In the middle, you're really talking about more of an SMS or call experience. How do you maintain that context? How do you opt into scheduled calls? How do you opt into direct dial me calls? And then finally, on the right-hand side, from an agent experience, how do we leverage our CRM tool and our agent efficiency tools that are already in place and push out digital journeys for kind of non-core tasks as we talk agent effectiveness on the call? And so if there's items like address updates, if there are items like how you want to manage your subscriptions and preferences, how can we push that out as a quick update to our customers and make sure that they can actually take that process offline and really preserve the online conversation with our contact center agents as very specific to that customer and that problem at that moment? So that's the content that we walked through. And Chad, thanks for joining back. Any kind of questions or thoughts from your side, Chad?
Oh, absolutely. And first of all, John, great job on visualization. Thank you very much for bringing some of those examples and putting them into context for us. That was fantastic. Thank you. I have a question, but okay, execs in the No Nation, let's get it all out there. Everything we just discussed and heard, let's get some questions in there. What's on our mind? What are we thinking? What concerns do we have? What challenges we want to discuss? So I'm really counting on a lot of our community to help out in that piece because you're the experts. You sit in the chair. John, I was thinking that over the years, we've all, for all the stated reasons to why we've been chasing the digital self-service strategy, and we could kind of list through them, but I think it would be just repetitive at this point. My question would be, what happens when it doesn't go as intended? Thinking, what are some of the reasons to maybe why that is not, if something is not happening in digital self-service strategy for a company, why are some of those reasons? And I was wondering, have we forgotten the agent digital experience? You kind of touched on it. How important or how relevant, in your opinion or thoughts there, or am I seeing it a little bit differently?
No, I agree with you. I think I associate that to two factors. One is kind of like the slow bleed, right? Where there is some pain, there is some churn with the customer experience, but there's just not the bandwidth or the capacity or the thought process to address that negative CSAT. The thing is, and you've been in the business for a while, it's that oftentimes where there's a product in a product feedback issue, how do we create that closed loop feedback to product? Sometimes to use a contact center or to use kind of like the customer engagement as a band-aid for a poorly performing product, it's really important to actually provide those real customer insights and feedback loop into product. So that's the secondary issue. And I think the primary issue is really just kind of like really having the intelligence and insight as far as how are the customers feeling about the customer digital journey, that experience. What the polls showed just on this call is that customer journey mapping just takes time. It's a cross-departmental effort. Then we start talking about tooling. We talk about the future direction of the company, and it's something that can die of its own weight. And so how do we make sure that we, as a company, spend the time to do the customer journey mapping and understand and get alignment across all departments?
When it doesn't work as intended, John, are there some basics? I mean, you could go back and look at it. Is that journey mapping definition? Is it data? Is it some of the CRM structure? I know it could be a host of things, but if you had to guess where it hasn't worked as intended for whatever reasons, where should and how should we start to relook at it?
For me, it starts with accountability and ownership. So who owns a customer journey? So when we talked about the tech stack, whether it's the CRM, the communication channel, the CSAT, the campaign management, does marketing own this? Does the customer support team own it? Does the sales team own it? Does product own it? I think the accountability and ownership of the customer journey really kind of drives a lot of that performance behavior and helps kind of break the log jam. Like I think a lot of companies really get stuck in that log jam because there's a bunch of different departments that have needs and requirements. So when it was interesting, we were talking to a Fortune 500 bank, right? And they have a very long, detailed form that they want to know as far as kind of onboarding a net new customer. As a net new customer, I don't think you should spend more than 4 to 5 minutes filling out my details before I can talk to a banker. That's annoying. There's also like a sweepstakes program, right? As a sweepstakes, if I'm filling out some content as an insurer customer, if I'm filling out some content to win a prize, I don't expect to spend more than 2 minutes on it. And so it's really all about kind of matching that expectation and that customer effort versus the reward.
Well, we definitely have some questions that have come in, so let's dive in. And Paul and Leanne from our board, I expect to hear from you, your thoughts, and some of the other members, a number of members of our community on here. Murat, thank you for this question as being asked from, how do you manage omni-channel communications relationship with customers who are not tech savvy? You have a thought around that?
I think that just to frame the question, I think the question is if a B2C company is a technical laggard, how do you actually, to some extent, leapfrog technology, right? Because I think an example of Airbnb or Uber, which are kind of easy examples to use, there's a heavy investment in technology. And I think where companies have underinvested in technology, that's where I think a solution like Airkit is really incredibly valuable, right? So you're not going to replace your ERP system. You're not going to replace your shipment scheduling system, and your system of engagement might be a CRM or might be a banking core. They might be older. So how do I actually create a digital experience based on what our customer journey should look like? And then how do I have a system that easily integrates into those other systems such that we can provide the update and we can also grab the relevant account information, whether it's a policy, a bank account, or an actual order history. So how can I pull that information and present it and wrap it in a good digital customer experience?
Well, good stuff. And Murat just responded back to clarify he was referring to the customers who are not tech savvy, maybe older, not have cell phones. So thank you for that clarification.
No, thank you for the clarification. Sorry to give you the other answer. When you think about different generations who use tools and technology differently, I think you spend a lot more time thinking about the digital experience and what does the layout look like and what is the form factor, right? And so depending on your embrace of technology, right? So we have a company that does kind of healthcare solutions for the elderly, right? how do you kind of manage a healthcare savings account, and what does the look and feel of that experience look like? So there might be a simpler set of options, a much longer conversation on the customer journey and the customer journey outcomes. And so for me, it's really about thinking about your target audience and thinking about that journey and the journey mapping, and being very precise about what outcomes you expect for each different kind of profile of customer that you have on the platform itself.
Yeah, and you've got some great mind share on this call. I'm seeing the people asking questions, know a lot of them very well, and thank you for your support. Actually, Leanne sits on our board from Oriental Trading Company. She's asking, when companies go this way of servicing customers, is there any lead up to this happening? Do companies give any heads up as to things are changing, or just launch and see how it goes?
That is always a mixed bag, and I think for the question, Leanne, and I think you know some of that answer. So a lot of companies, there's 2 or 3 different approaches, right? So a lot of companies will do the A/B testing, where they won't really announce anything, and they'll actually just kind of test each pool to see what type of engagement is improved, whether it's the old one or the new one, and kind of measure CSAT against that. There is the kind of just rip off the Band-Aid and we're going to start a new day, and here's your Omnichannel and chat choices. I think typically for high volume contact centers, that becomes very disruptive, and it can drive a huge queue of either calls or a huge queue of kind of like negative feedback. And so it depends how resilient your customers are as far as their ability to adopt and kind of embrace new technology platform. And then the other thing, which I think we all do to some extent, is to use a survey group. It's not a customer advisory board, but how do you actually survey your customer as far as the look and feel of the new customer journey? Is that something that they embrace?
Right.
Are there any other insights that you can gain? And like the fourth thing, which is simple but goofy, is actually publishing what the changes are and making a knowledge article available. So to your point earlier, Chad, about different audiences and embracing technology, have an article on it, have a blog post, have a social post on it, and have a YouTube video. And depending on kind of like your form factor, typically those 4 will definitely kind of hit the broadest swath of customers.
Well, I know Leanne personally. She's a hard charger. She's not the type that's going to sit and see how it goes. So, but I agree, echo with some of your comments there that you shared, John. John, let's go to rapid fire here because of the number of questions we have, and I just want to be mindful. So 30 seconds or 60 seconds or less, try to get some answers. Mark, good to hear from you again from Ambersource Virgin Courier. Mark is asking, he's been a community member for a long time too. The example, I guess, the state of Maryland and the grocery shopping cases seem to demonstrate how digital can assist in optimizing bottom line financial results. You know, kind of a comment there. Where is the demonstration on how these cases lowered customer effort, measurably improved customer sat, or demonstrates improved ability to know the customer and the journey they've been on? So I know there's a lot of questions or pieces in there, but would there be anything that you could share a little bit more on the fact finding? Do you need me to repeat some of that? Yes.
Some of it for sure, but the general content is, hey, what was the ROI payback? What was the call deflection? What was the cost per call? And what was the end resulting satisfaction of that? And so we do have those results. I can share with you, Chad, and you can share it with the audience afterwards. Some of our materials as it relates to both kind of like Mercado, who has a case study that is either published or will be published next couple of days, as well as the state of Maryland, which just talks about the efficiencies that they've gained. Really, for both of them, as you, in the case of the state of Maryland, it's really the call deflection and rescheduling, but it's also the reduced number of inbound calls for the same issue. And so there's a cost per call. I don't have the specifics with me, but it's about $4 to $6 cost per call. And in the case of Mercado, it's really like the cost per email or the cost per call. And so happy to share those case studies with you and have those details available.
And I think we have some reference materials that are going to be on the slide or being shown somewhere in the platform here, or we'll make sure the audience gets these references that for some of the case studies. But Mark, thank you for putting that out there. I'm not going to try this name from the company Sharika, but I like a question. Have you seen how companies link customer loyalty to customer support in a more data-driven way? Any thoughts there?
Yeah. I first of all think about Maslow's hierarchy, which is I think a lot of support organizations are safety and shelter, and what you're really talking about there are really kind of like the more optimized and managed needs. And so I have not seen many customers track satisfaction and loyalty to kind of like an engagement strategy, but it is very powerful. And I think we all talk about KYC, which is know your customer. But I think a lot of companies don't do a very good job at digging into knowing their customer and tying back their engagement and activity with me to actually drive a reward outcome. I think some of them are very mechanical, but usually they're not terribly dynamic.
Yeah. Well, Miss Jackie Carver, if you're still with us, you're always another hard charger. Jackie always has good questions, but basically Jackie's saying, in more of a comment here, I think echoing something that maybe was said earlier, the organizational ownership and alignment is more complex than driving the tool solution.
Yes, that's a
So,
simple.
a big amen.
For sure.
A big amen there. All right, Jackie, amen. And Paul, also who sits on our board from GoodLeap. Paul, thank you again for just your question. Do you see, John, any differences between CX for companies that are delivering B2B experiences driving B2C? That's a great clarification question.
Yeah, for sure. And I can even tie this back to the loyalty question from before. I do think B2B companies do a much better job of knowing their customer and aggregating transactional data to have a perspective on that customer health, the customer health score. And so when I think about B2B engagement, it's mostly about higher volumes of activity, understanding and prioritizing the things that matter. And so the engagement tools are much more sophisticated than just an order or a transaction or a claim or a call. And so it really requires that customer journey thought of how do I click through my request to get a call to action. And based on how I rate that customer, what level of service am I going to make available to them?
I want to get a couple more quick ones in here, and just be curious, John, what channels do you hear companies are most frequently serving customers through? I want to hear your response. I'll tell you my response.
I think the primary old-fashioned one is always the telephone. But like what I will say is most companies augment that with email as a notification or communication channel. Email, I think, to respond to a complaint is really not great at all. It's not a good consumer experience. So what we really see is the channels, which could be voice, SMS, email, etc. The channels, if we can provide a consistent digital journey or digital experience across those channels, I think that's where the win comes in, because then you're allowing the customer to interact with you on the channel of their selection.
Yeah, no question. Telephone by far is the largest channel of support and continues to be and has been. I think we're all consumers, all of us, and we know when we've had a good digital experience or a bad digital experience for all the reasons. I think a lot of reasons that still consumers will opt to the phone because we're not getting resolution in the digital channel for whatever reason, or maybe we as brands are just not being thoughtful enough in how that experience and journey may look like in that frustration area. It'd be interesting, John, if we had this same conversation 5 years from now, mark the date, mark the year, where we think we've progressed as an industry towards digital self-service and customer experience and effort. Hopefully,
yeah, hopefully much farther along. But I really think it's understanding the customer and responding to the customer with context. And I think that that's incredibly hard from a B2C perspective. And so how do you think about that customer journey, and how do you supplement and infuse that journey with information and intelligence as you go along? And how do you carry that intelligence to the next step of the journey?
So, John, I'll leave on this, and then maybe some words of quick advice, because our time always goes so fast. For anyone listening to this recording today that is looking to reset or maybe just start, and where they're at in the maturity scale of this, where should they start typically, or where should they look if they're thinking of resetting? And any suggestions or advice to kind of streamline and avoid any kind of pitfalls we've all learned together over the years?
That is an interesting question, because I think it goes back to the organizational question where I gave an authoritative amen. Ultimately, as a business, there always becomes priorities, and there always becomes funding that supports those priorities. So as you look at your kind of high volume, high impact, how can you quantifiably measure and justify the cost impact to the business of inaction? How can you actually justify and have the conversation to say, opening this new channel is not just adding more cost, it's actually saving cost over time, and it's actually increasing loyalty. And so I think for me, that organization question really resonates, but also kind of how do you get the prioritization within the company to get the funding? And typically it is a big pain point or a priority that you've spent the time to kind of educate kind of leadership on the cost, whether it's kind of retaining customers, expanding customers, et cetera.
Any final words? I've got a couple wrap up things I want to share with the community, John, but would there be any words of encouragement or just continue, first of all, you did a great job with the visualization, bringing some of those points together. But would there be anything you just want to kind of leave this discussion with for our audience?
No, Chad, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of speak here. It was really a good conversation about kind of like omnichannel and digital experience and some of the pitfalls, as you say. And I'm more than happy. All my contact information is available through this kind of web conversation. More than happy to engage with people to talk about my experience in customer success and customer management. And from an Airkit perspective, how we can provide digital journeys that are easy to deploy, that are rich and consistent across channels, and that integrate seamlessly to your backend. So more than happy to help.
Well, I know we as a community, how committed we are to keeping customer and agent number one in our hearts. And I know how hard each and every one of you continue to work to make that a continued progress and work in motion and improvement. So congratulations for all of the efforts. John, you've been a great guest and a host with us today. I can't say thank you enough, and to the Airkit family. I'd encourage you to look more into some of the rich and robust offerings and things that they have within their platform. It's definitely well worth a look. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, just reach out to me, chad@execsno.com, or if you have any other suggestions from today's conversation or questions, please continue to reach out to me. I will leave on this note that you are not alone. You have a whole community of 12,000 of us at Execs in the Know standing behind you to help support your journey. And we continue to look to bring great guests like John and others into the sharing platform. So whatever you're up to for the rest of your week, good luck. John, you've been a pleasure to work with, and I hope you'll come back again at a near date.
Would love to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, audience. Thank you for your time and listen. And again, reach out anytime. This will now conclude today's session.